The silence in the dusty general store was so thick you could choke on it. Heavier than the mid-July heat hanging over the valley. Elias Thorne, a man whose skin looked like cracked leather and whose eyes held the cold hardness of flint, slammed his hand onto the counter. The sound made the shopkeeper jump and the few patrons freeze. Elias didn't look at them. He looked only at Clara, a woman of 28 whose hands were red from scrubbing other people's floors and whose dress had been patched so many times it was more thread than fabric. Asterisk, did you hear me, girl? Elias rasped, his voice sounding like gravel grinding together. I have 3 months. The doctor says the rot in my lungs is finishing the job. 3 months. You marry me, you make sure I don't die alone in that big empty house, and you keep it all. The land, the cattle, the money in the vault, everything. Asterisk Clara felt the blood drain from her face. She could feel the eyes of the town burning into her back, Mrs. Higgins, who whispered that Clara would never find a husband. Mr. Miller, who held the debt over Clara's father's head. Elias Thorne was the richest man in the county, but he was also the meanest. He was a man who was rumored to have shot a dog just for barking too loud. Asterisk, why me? Clara whispered, her voice trembling. Asterisk, because, Elias said, leaning in, the smell of tobacco and old sickness clinging to him. You're the only one in this town who looks me in the eye when you say good morning. Instead of looking at my wallet, he extended a gnarled hand. 3 months, Clara. A business deal. Do we have an accord? Asterisk Clara thought of her father, coughing in their drafty cabin, unable to afford the medicine the doctor prescribed. She thought of the eviction notice nailed to their door just yesterday. She looked at Elias's hand, then at his eyes. For a fleeting second, beneath the flinty hardness, she saw something else. Not malice, terror. Asterisk, she took a breath that felt like inhaling broken glass. Then, she reached out and took his hand. I'll do it, she said. The wedding was a funeral before the fact. It took place 2 days later in the small wooden chapel, with no guests other than the priest and a witness dragged in from the saloon. When they walked out, the town didn't cheer. They stared. Men spat in the dirt as they passed. Women pulled their children close, whispering the word gold digger loud enough for the wind to carry it. Asterisk Clara kept her head high, though her knees shook. She climbed onto Elias's wagon, her singular suitcase containing everything she owned resting at her feet. The ride up to the Thorne estate, a sprawling mansion on the hill that overlooked the valley like a vulture, was silent. Asterisk, when they arrived, the reality of her bargain set in. The house was magnificent on the outside, but inside it was a tomb. Dust sheets covered the furniture. The air was stale, smelling of time and neglect. Asterisk, you take the guest room. Elias grunted, pointing to a door at the top of the stairs. I sleep down here near the fire. My lungs can't take the cold upstairs. Asterisk, he turned to walk away, but stopped, his back to her. Don't pity me, Clara. You're here to work. Cook the meals, keep the fire lit, and when the coughing starts, just bring the water. Don't look at me like a stray dog. Asterisk, I don't pity you, Mr. Thorne, Clara said softly. I respect a deal. Asterisk. He grunted, perhaps a laugh, perhaps a cough, and slammed his door. That night, Clara lay in a bed with silk sheets that felt like ice, listening to the old man wheeze in the darkness below, wondering if she had sold her soul or saved it. Asterisk, the first month wasn't just hard. It was a war of attrition. Elias was a tyrant. Nothing was ever right. The soup was too salty. The fire was too hot. The pillows were too soft. He tested her patience every hour of every day. But Clara didn't break. She had raised 3 younger brothers after her mother passed. She knew that grumpy men were usually just men in pain. Asterisk, one evening, Storm rolled in, shaking the house to its foundations. Elias was in his armchair, a coughing fit seizing him so violently his face turned purple. Clara rushed to him, not with the hesitation of a stranger, but with the efficiency of a nurse. She held a cool cloth to his head, rubbed his back to ease the spasms, and held the basin for him. When the fit passed. He slumped back, exhausted, sweat beading on his forehead. He looked small. The giant of the valley was just a bag of bones in a velvet chair. Why do you stay? He wheezed, his eyes closed. You could poison my tea. Nobody would question it. They expect it. Clara sat on the floor beside him, watching the fire. My father used to say that a promise made in the dark must be kept in the light. I promised to care for you, Elias, not for the money, but because nobody should have to be scared of the dark alone. Elias opened his eyes. For the first time, the hardness was gone entirely. He reached into his vest pocket and pulled out a small silver object. It was a locket. He fumbled with the clasp, his shaking fingers unable to work it. Open it, he commanded softly. Clara took it. Inside was a tiny, faded daguerreotype of a woman and a small boy. My wife, Sarah, and my son, William, Elias whispered. The influenza took them both 40 years ago. In this house? I covered the furniture the day they died, and I haven't uncovered it since. I'm so sorry, Clara said, her heart aching for the lonely monster in the chair. Everyone thinks I'm hoarding this money out of greed, he said, a tear tracing a path through the dust on his cheek. I didn't have anyone to give it to. Until I saw you help that stray dog in town last month. You gave it your sandwich. You were hungry, girl. I could see it. But you gave the meat to the dog. He looked at her, intense and lucid. You have a good heart, Clara. Don't let this world take it from you. That night, the dynamic shifted. It wasn't a master and a servant anymore. It was two lonely people waiting for the inevitable. But peace in the Old West is rarely left undisturbed for long. 6 weeks into the marriage, a rider galloped up the long driveway. It was a man in a flashy suit with a slick mustache and eyes that shifted like Jebediah Thorne, Elias's nephew from the city. Jebediah didn't knock. He walked right in, dusting off his coat, and looked at Clara with a sneer. So. Jebediah laughed. This is the nursemaid uncle picked up. I heard the rumors in town. Quite the scandal. Elias struggled to stand up from his chair, trembling with rage. Get out, Jeb. You weren't welcome 10 years ago, and you aren't welcome now. Now, uncle. Jebediah said, walking around the room, picking up expensive vases and inspecting them. I'm just here to check on my inheritance. I heard you were dying. I figured I should be here to facilitate the transition. He looked at Clara. The courts won't uphold a deathbed marriage to a pauper, sweetheart. I've got lawyers in the city who will tear that paper to shreds before the dirt hits his coffin. You'll walk away with nothing. Clara stood up, stepping between the old man and his nephew. He isn't dead yet. And while he breathes, this is his house. Leave. Jebediah chuckled, stepping close to her, invading her space. Enjoy playing house, darling. When the clock runs out, I'll be waiting at the gate. He left, but the poison remained. Elias sank back into his chair, defeat written in his posture. He's right, Elias muttered. He's a vulture, but he's a smart one. He'll tie you up in court for years. You'll lose everything. I don't care about the money, Clara said fiercely. Let him have the money. I'm not leaving you. Elias looked at her, a strange, calculating light returning to his eyes. Get me my ledger, he said firmly. And get the sheriff. Tonight, the sheriff. Just do it, Clara. There isn't much time. Asterisk. The end came sooner than 3 months. It was a Tuesday morning, 10 weeks after the wedding. The sun was rising, painting the valley in hues of gold and violet. Clara was in the kitchen making oatmeal when she heard the sound, or rather, the lack of it. The rhythmic wheezing from the living room had stopped. She ran. Elias was slumped in his chair, looking out the window at the sunrise. His chest was still, his eyes fixed on the horizon. He looked peaceful, the lines of pain smoothed away from his face. Clara didn't scream. She walked over, knelt beside him, and took his cold hand. She wept, not for the fortune she might lose, but for the friend she had found in the most unlikely of places. She sat there for an hour, just holding his hand, till the sound of carriage wheels on the gravel broke the silence. It was Jebediah. He must have had a watcher in the hills. He burst through the door, the sheriff trailing behind him, looking uncomfortable. Well, Jebediah demanded, looking at the body. Is it done? Clara stood up, wiping her eyes. He's gone. Excellent. Jebediah smirked. He turned to the sheriff. Sheriff, I want this woman removed from the premises immediately. She is a squatter. As the closest blood relative, I claim the estate. Now, hold on, Jeb, the sheriff said, taking off his hat. There's the matter of the will. The will is irrelevant. Jebediah shouted. The marriage is a sham. Undue influence on a dying man. Actually. A new voice spoke from the doorway. It was Mr. Henderson, the town lawyer, carrying a thick leather satchel. The marriage isn't the primary concern anymore. Clara looked confused. She backed away, feeling small against these powerful men. What are you talking about? Jebediah snapped. Mr. Henderson walked to the center of the room and placed a document on the table. Elias called me and the sheriff here 4 weeks ago. He was concerned that his marriage to Clara might be contested by greedy parties. He glared at Jebediah. So. Jebediah sneered. I'll contest it. So, the lawyer continued. Elias dissolved the estate. The room went silent. What? Jebediah whispered. Elias Thorne sold the estate, the lawyer said calmly. The land, the cattle, the house. He sold it all to a holding trust. For how much? Jebediah demanded. Where's the money? I want the money. He sold it for $1, the lawyer said. Jebediah looked like he was going to explode. To who? Who holds the trust? The lawyer turned to Clara. He sold it to the Clara Thorne Orphanage and Community Trust. Clara gasped, covering her mouth. The terms of the trust are simple, the lawyer read. The house is to be converted into a home for children who have no one. The land is to be farmed to feed the poor of the county. And the sole administrator of the trust, with a lifetime salary and full executive power, is Mrs. Clara Thorne. Jebediah turned purple. This is insanity. He gave it away to charity. He gave it to the only person he trusted to do the right thing, the lawyer said, handing Clara a sealed envelope. He left this for you, Clara. Jebediah stormed out, cursing the dust, the house, and the dead man. He knew he was beaten. There was no inheritance to steal. There was only a charity to manage, and the courts would never overturn a charitable trust to give money to a nephew with a gambling record. Clara opened the letter with trembling hands. My dearest Clara. If you are reading this, the old grump is finally quiet. I know you were worried about Jeb. I knew he would come. I knew they would say you married me for the gold. So, I made sure you didn't get the gold. I gave you something heavier. I gave you a purpose. I watched you that day with the stray dog. I knew then that you were a builder, not a keeper. This house has been a tomb for too long. Fill it with noise. Fill it with children running down the halls. Fill it with life. That is the only way to clean the dust from my soul. Asterisk, you didn't just take my hand that day in the store? Clara, you took my breath away because you reminded me that there is still goodness in this harsh world. Asterisk P.S. Look under the floorboard beneath my armchair. There's a small tin box. It's not part of the estate. It's just my savings from selling eggs as a boy. About $5,000. That's for you. Buy your father his medicine. Buy yourself a pretty dress. Your friend Elias. Clara lowered the letter, tears streaming freely now. She looked around the dusty, silent room. It didn't feel like a tomb anymore. She walked to the window and threw open the heavy drapes. The morning light flooded in, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. Below, in the valley, the town was waking up. They would still talk. They would still gossip. But it didn't matter. Clara turned to the sheriff and the lawyer. "Gentlemen," she said, her voice strong, the voice of the mistress of the house. "We have a lot of work to do. We need to order beds. We need to hire a cook. We're opening the doors on Monday." The sheriff smiled, putting his hat back on. "Yes, ma'am. I reckon Elias would like that." Clara looked back at the empty chair one last time. She placed her hand on the velvet backrest. "Rest easy, Elias," she whispered. "I'll keep the lights on." And as she walked out onto the porch, breathing in the fresh morning air, the wind rustled through the wheat fields, sounding suspiciously like a chuckle.